Are you going to get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be as clear as we can be.
I think Woody might have been counting clicks wrong or something was going on. I mean, I don't know how to count, so...
Before we meet this week's guest, Jordi, we're super close now to the start of the 2024 season. How's the excitement level?
It's finally building. I think I'm actually looking forward to going racing again. It takes a while to get over the burnout of the season before, and because you don't really stop, you just keep working and working and working, and next thing you know, racing starts again. So, but I'm looking forward to it.
Good stuff, man. Well, for this episode, we're joined by the man who finished the 2023 season on a pretty high with an incredible victory at Mont-Sainte-Anne. Jackson Goldstone, welcome to the show.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, man. Well, let's talk about quite a lot of things today, but the 2023 season started with you in hospital with serious appendix issues like ahead of the season started, and I'm sure I'm among the majority of mountain bike fans out there when I say I'd hoped for a much better start to the 2024 season for you, but unfortunately It wasn't to be. Just talk us through like that hardline crash and what's been going on since then, because we're a couple of months after that now.
Yeah, so obviously had a big crash at hardline. Ended up tearing my ACL and MCL. So it was a pretty big injury. And I had surgery on my ACL, but they left my MCL alone. So I'm 5 weeks post surgery now, and just kind of chugging along, doing as much as I can, starting to ride and spin on the bike a bit more, and lots and lots of physio. So doing everything I can, but still got a long way to go before I can get back in the races. Yeah.
Do they give you any indication of like when that might be, or is it one of those things that you just have to see how it plays out?
I mean, it's definitely to see how it plays out for sure. I mean, there's obviously like the rough estimate of, 6 months, but it could be less, it could be more. I have no clue, but I'm not going to put a date on when I'll be back. I'm just going to play it by ear and see how it goes.
For sure, man. And will we see you at the races in any capacity like ahead of that? Do you plan to try and get to some?
Yeah, I'm going to go to the Leogang Vaudreuil-Leger block. So spend some time at those races, some time at the Red Bull Performance Center, trying to get some physio work there as well. So kind of, few weeks in Europe, kind of just hanging out and chilling.
Nice. Good stuff, man. Well, let's talk about suspension. Jackson, I think Jordi came to you at Snowshoe last season with a new fork damper, which we now know as Grip X2, that was recently released. And I'm guessing a lot of riders, especially at that point in the season, are kind of pretty cautious about trying new things. Like they know where they're at with their bikes and their setup. And especially when, you were in the hunt for the overall at that point in the season, like how do you look at making a change that significant during a race season? Were you confident with that?
Yeah, I feel like I don't really mind as much of my riding style. Like I can get used to things really quickly, and I kind of just, if something's better, I'm very open and willing to try it, because I think if it only takes me a few runs to get used to something, or I can tell if it's going to be better or worse. And once I put the new dampener in Snowshoe, it was amazing, and I was loving it within the first lap. So it was kind of ever since then I was like, staying in, was stoked to have the opportunity to have it from you guys, and I was loving it.
Sweet. And Jordi, there were some issues with that first instance of the build though, right?
Yeah, well, I think,
are you gonna get into it?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to be as clear as we can be. I think, you got one day of practice on it, huh? And then...
Yeah, I practiced... No, I had a day and a half, because it was right before my quali run, is when we had to switch it.
Good as possible. And we actually built it incorrectly. It was too short. So, like, every time he popped the front wheel up, it was topping out on the damper, which is not ideal. Like, in theory, you could pull that damper apart in the best circumstances. If everything lines up, you just rip the damper in two. And so we actually pulled that brand new damper out after having done practice on it, put the old damper back in, and then he went and qualified and raced, which not ideal under any circumstances, but I feel like if he hung with it like a pro. Like a lot of people would have had a meltdown. And Jack,
yeah,
gotta do what you gotta do.
Well, I mean, yeah, it was like I knew I was gonna take that risk on if something, wasn't gonna work, but I was stoked with the opportunity and I liked it. So it was worth a try. Obviously wasn't ideal to go back. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. I only noticed the top out thing in this one little section where I had to do like a pretty big bunny hop. Otherwise, I was like, it was totally fine everywhere else. So I was almost like willing to risk it, but Jordi didn't let me.
Fair. How would you describe the difference then? What did you feel when you switched over to that new damper?
Oh, I mean, it was also kind of like, because we swapped tracks. Like did I go straight into snowshoe with the new damper? I think I did. Like I didn't get to do like a back to back.
It was just
test.
Like, here you go.
It was just like, it was straight in. So it was kind of hard to like tell the differences between the two. But basically just like felt like it was a lot smoother on the hands. Still like had the support and held up, but didn't pack up and get stiff, and just overall felt way smoother.
Yeah. And was it hard then to get like your head around the fact that you'd had this thing that you felt's better and then it sort of has to be taken away for race day? That must have been tricky to manage.
It was annoying, but it was the risk I took, and you just got to deal with those kind of things. So I just got to look forward and push on. But I mean, if I had the choice to keep it in, I definitely would have. But
not worth the risk.
It's fine. We had another one. They were quick enough to build a proper correct size one for Mont-Sainte-Anne. So that was nice.
We had parts made, and next day are shipped to MSA and had them put together by first day of practice. So that worked out.
That was good hustle. Good work.
Fair play. Jordi, what process then do you work through when you've got a rider that's trying new parts? So there's certain steps that you'll work through with them?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same as any other product. You just run through those same steps. In general, we have a pretty good idea of how things are going to perform before we hand it to an athlete. With that damper, we didn't have... I'd never ridden one. We had so few of them out. There were 2 athletes on them. So it was a bit of a wing and a prayer. We had a couple people in-house ride them, say they were really good. And then we just threw it on a bike. Obviously, they'd been through all the testing and been through quality assessments and everything. So we knew they were solid. We didn't know we built it 10 millimeters short, but we did know we put the work in otherwise.
And there's big differences, I guess, in the tracks between snowshoe and Mont-Sainte-Anne, Jackson. Like snowshoe, I hear is relatively flat, and there's quite a lot of need to be able to carry speed through those big, long, almost flat rock sections, whereas Mont-Sainte-Anne has a bit more gradient to it, still pretty rough, but a different track. Like, are you doing much different in setup between those 2 tracks? Can you talk us through how you might change the suspension?
I mean, I don't really remember what we did because Jordi actually never tells me what he changes, but I think we did change a little bit of stuff. I'm trying to rack my brain. I don't quite remember what it was, but I think, I mean, you do have to run slightly different setup from snowshoe to Mont-Sainte-Anne. I mean, they're just like, that snowshoe, you're trying to carry speed over flat rocks. At Mont-Sainte-Anne, you're trying to, there's enough speed there. You're just trying to slow down to limit your speed. So, just, different tracks and different setups for sure. Yeah. But maybe he remembers what we changed, but yeah.
Go on, Jordi, tell us more.
I don't remember. Yes,
he just says try this. He just says try this, and then I try it, and then I'm like, cool.
Jackson and his mechanic Woody and I we've been working together for a bit now, and we have a good relationship where we know what we know what to do, and we know what to aim for. And since it was a new damper basically because he rode it probably 5 or 6 runs in snowshoe, and then you're going to MSA. So it's hard to say exactly what changes you would have made. In general, MSA is going to be stiffer on the fork and a little bit softer on the shock just because it is steeper. And most of those key sections, there's a ton of weight on the front wheel already. Whereas snowshoe, you're just trying to get a bit more hold up in the back, probably just to carry speed and keep the chassis attitude a little bit flatter.
Are you changing speeds of the suspension at all, though, between those two different rounds? Like, is there something to be said for the way the suspension handles maintaining speed at snowshoe versus Mont-Sainte-Anne?
Yeah, like rebound speed kind of thing.
Yeah, I guess.
A little bit, but it's not, it's funny because you're not really changing how fast it is because the rider's weighting it in a different way. So if you speed up the fork at Mont-Sainte-Anne, there's so much more weight on the fork already that you haven't actually sped it up. You've just kind of compensated for the steepness of the terrain. If that makes sense. It's like the rider is such a big part of the package that if you just move back a little bit, you've essentially slowed down rebound. Whereas if you look at, did you guys see Roxon's crash in the whoops when the shock blew up? Right? Like that doesn't really happen so much on the mountain bike scene. It's because the rider is such a huge part of that process. But on the moto, it's like it's got to control that extra 200 pounds.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
Body position isn't quite as big a deal, whereas the bikes, like body position's everything.
So what do you remember, Jordi, from that Mont-Sainte-Anne week then? Do you remember what kind of stuff you worked with Jackson? Obviously, he was still, I guess, getting familiar with the new damper, but talk us through the week from your perspective with Jackson.
I remember really we were just playing with compressions on that fork because we were learning just how much damping you could run now, as opposed to the other fork was, we probably changed 2 clicks on the other fork at any given race, like 1 click here, 1 click there, and that's about all you're going to get. Whereas this fork, I think we figured out that you really can run a bunch of damping if you want to. Like we started at 8 and 8 or something normal, similar to the old fork, and we ended up at like 4 and 6 on low speed, high speed compression.
Yeah, I remember us going a lot firmer, and I remember also I think Woody might have been counting clicks wrong or something was going on, because I remember between you and Woody, you were telling me a number, Woody was telling me a different number, and then Woody would check it to his number, but then I'd go up and I'd be like, that doesn't feel like last run. And then so it was the first day practice. I remember it being a bit of a lot of confusion there, and maybe a wasted run or two. I don't know, because I was just like, what's going on? But I remember one run, my bike feeling like it's completely different, the fork, and then got it back again. But that was a funny learning process.
About right. It's not the first time we've had counting issues with multiple people.
I mean, I don't know how to count, so I don't know how to count clicks.
Did you find it super useful then, Jackson, to be able to have that like additional compression damping without some of the downsides of that? So you've still got the suppleness of the fork, but you're able to get more support.
Yeah. I mean, it basically just, you were able to keep that the positioning and the feel of that fork, but just like, it's just easier on your hands, and you have a bit more grip because it's taking a bit more of the heat and the bumps and the stuff like that. So yeah, it was really good. My bike setup at Mont-Sainte-Anne was like, it felt unreal. It felt like I could turn it wherever it needs to go and it would just go.
That's the way you want to feel, right?
Yeah.
The conditions were pretty good all week, if I remember, but then the rain kind of came in on finals day. Does that bother you, Jackson? Do you change much on days like that?
I don't think, if it was like a complete torrential downpour, maybe we would have changed something. I'm pretty sure I don't think we did, or maybe we took one off or something, but I think we kept it the same because like it rained, but it didn't rain enough to be muddy. It just kind of like made some of the roots a little slicker and like kind of, made the dust a little bit less dusty. So Yeah, in my opinion, the track actually was like more fun and better because I mean, the rocks were quite slick, that's for sure. But everywhere else was just hero dirt, so it was good. But yeah, I'm pretty sure we didn't change setup at all.
Yeah, and quite a lot of pressure on your shoulders, I'd imagine, coming into that race run. So it's your first time on home soil in your elite career. You're still in hunt for the overall. I think you had to take the win with Loic ninth or lower. But was Loic already at the bottom by the time you set off? Did you know how he'd got on?
No, I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that like watches the times that I have to beat before my race run. I just like to do the best I can because that's all that matters, right? And yeah, I mean, I don't remember Loic getting down from the top, but I remember hearing Ethan Craig. I remember hearing the crowd from the top of the hill. When I was in the start gate, I remember hearing the crowd at the bottom. So that kind of fired me up a little bit extra. But yeah, I mean, I knew what I had to do, and I think Loic had to finish 7th or lower, and I had to win to take the overall. I think he got 3rd, but I remember looking at the times, if he was like 0.6 of a second slower, he would have been 7th. So it was crazy how close it was.
Yeah,
it would have been crazy. But I mean, I did everything I could do. It was still an amazing, amazing day, and I'm not mad at all.
Do you feel the nerves then in the gate? Like that's a lot of pressure. Perform at home, overall in your first season, all of that stuff's there. How are you feeling in the gate?
Oh, I mean, I was shitting myself. Sorry for the language, but yeah, no, I was. It was weird. Like I was nervous, but it was also like a sense of like calmness and like focus, if that makes sense. Because I knew what I needed to do. I felt like I had everything in place to do it, and it was cool. It was such a weird feeling. Like I don't remember any of my race run. I was in the flow state the whole entire time. So it's a feeling that I definitely want to have again.
And I'm sure you will at some point, mate. And you did most of the damage in sectors 2 and 3, I think. You were best part of 1.8 seconds faster than anyone else in sector 2, and a little over a second faster than anyone else in sector 3. Do you know what it was you did in those sectors? Do you have any feel for whether you were on different lines or something about your approach? Do you know why you were able to put such a dent into people in those 2 sections?
I didn't really have many other lines. I had 2 more gaps than other people were doing, I think. But the section that I think I gained most of the time was that like super fast like concrete berm, and then the gap, and then like that new loamy section kind of in the sector 2, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I felt like I didn't break through that entire section, and it was still a bit slippery there. So that bit I took some risk. But yeah, I was definitely on a really, really good run. And then exiting that trees just before the second split ended, I did this little hop out of the trees that I only found that morning on practice. And it was the most no-brainer pull. Like it wasn't even that big of a pull at all, but instead of like pushing down and going through a rock garden, you just gap to the backside of a rock and you get perfect exit speed, and then you're settled for the corner. So it was, I think just like a mix of these little tiny, small gaps that I was doing. And then, I don't think I've ridden a bike better as well. I felt like I was on rails. So that helps too.
Awesome. Jordi, what about from your side? Like talk us through, you've obviously worked with Jackson a lot over the last couple of seasons and put this new product into his hands with the new damper as well. And it was, pretty insane. When you look at those time gaps, 4.3 ahead of Ethan, and then another 2 seconds back from Ethan to everybody else. So other than Ethan, 6.5 seconds into the fastest in the world, it's got to feel pretty good.
It does feel pretty good. I don't know. I don't know who's more stoked, me or the athletes. And it really is a similar thing. Like we build up all week, and it's not dangerous for me, but I still have the same feeling of butterflies and nervous energy. Like this is what I want to do. And I feel like my whole goal is to get one of them to win races or do what I can. It's obviously in their hands, but I go through the same emotions. And I think it's why everybody kind of has a little blow off at the end of the races as well. It's like you build up all week and then all of a sudden it's done and there's all this like stress release. Yeah. And then you go look for something to do.
Fair. And in commentary, they talked about Jackson's kind of light style on the bike. Is there anything different in Jackson's setup to the majority that supports that approach, or are we just seeing Jackson's like natural riding style coming through there?
That's all him. The setup's nothing crazy, right? And it's funny to call it light. Well, I think it is. I guess you could describe it as light. It's just learning where he can apply pressure and where you don't need to. Like he's creating the same forces as everybody else. It's just that he's picking where to do it. And he's able to time things for now better than anybody else.
And it sort of set the tone at the last part of the season there, and almost was a worrying signal for me anyway to other riders. Like that was a huge margin. Do you think that gave other people something to worry about in the off season? Have people been puzzling over what went on that day? Because that is a big winning margin in a World Cup these days.
Oh, it's huge, and I would hope it's giving people pause. I mean, we talked about this a little bit earlier, like the days of Gwyn just absolutely dominating somebody on a track that you didn't think that could happen. And then Bryceland kind of doing the same thing. Like these are just evolutions in the sport. And I think we've probably witnessed another one.
Interesting to see where it goes. Jackson, we hope we get to see more of you on the racetrack soon. But in the meantime, will you be tuning in to watch Fort William? Like, is that going to be a painful thing that you'll avoid, or is it something you really want to do?
I still love the sport. I'm definitely not gonna watch as much as I can from it. I think I have to pay for some subscription now to watch it in Canada. I'm not sure what's going on.
Gotta get Flow Sport.
Yeah.
One more thing.
Yeah, well, let's team together. We'll get the same account and then watch it at the same time. But yeah, I mean, for sure, I'm gonna be watching. I may be out, but I still love the sport. I still want to cheer my everyone else on in my team, and I still want to see what's going on. So I'll be watching for sure, and I'm still gonna go to a few of the races as well in Europe and spectate. So can't wait for that.
Who would if you were racing, who would you be worried about this season? Like I'm sure you've been keeping an eye on form and pre-season and what people are up to. Like are there certain riders that you think we should be keeping an eye out for?
I think Laurie, I think Finn, I think Loic. I think those three are kind of, at least one of them's going to be top three, in my opinion. I've been helping Finn out a little bit. I gave him some shuttles the other day because I've been so bored. So, a little bit of, he's my buddy. He's, a fellow Canadian. So it's cool to see him training. But yeah, I know he's been looking really good. And then, I think Laurie, he's had, he's coming back stronger. He's kind of dealing with some of his health problems that he had. And I think he's super motivated. And then obviously Loic is Loic. So yeah, we'll see. But, it still is anyone's game. I think it's starting with Fort William is going to be interesting, see where everyone's at. It's definitely a big slap in the face for the people who are maybe not where they need to be, and it'll be good.
Yeah, physical track to start the season off. Well, it's been super fun chatting and hearing more about the detail of that run and what went into it. And we're going to be back with another rider later in the season. But until then, a massive thanks to Jackson and Jordi. If you want to check out the Fox range, you can head to ridefox.com. But yeah, for now, thanks, guys. Appreciate the time and enjoyed chatting.
Thanks, you guys.
Cheers, Chris. Yeah, cheers, Ray.